get ready in Britain and Ireland, all round the world, to stand up and cheer. And Damon Hill wins in Belgium. Schumacher second. Fantastic. Eddie Jordan at last after all his efforts.
We hopefully would have inspired a lot of young teams, even to this day, that hey, you can come into Formula One, you can defy all the odds, you can actually grab it by the horns and say, we are going to do everything we can to be competitive.
Welcome back to Stop the Lights with Olivia and Ciarán. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Ciarán. Hello, Olivia.
How are you?
I'm so good. I'm very excited already.
I know, and we should apologise to everybody who were asking, were we coming back for an episode in between the two races? No, we thought we had said that. Clearly we didn't. Schedules just didn't line up. So we said, look, the two races, they're so close together. We'll just go after the Chinese Grand Prix, not realising that we would have probably enough to have talked about between the two races for two separate episodes. But here we are, a bumper edition of Stop the Lights.
I've just realised that I talked to you after the Australian Grand Prix. I haven't actually talked to you at all about the Chinese Grand Prix.
I know.
I don't know why that is, actually. I talked to you a little bit about the sprint that I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning for.
Which I did not.
That was hard. that was a hard one. And then I nearly missed the start of the Chinese Grand Prix. I had to go back on my Now subscription. Luckily, you can rewind 2 hours. I woke up like 20 minutes late and I was like,
oh my God, I also woke up late.
No.
I was 7 laps in when I turned it on.
So I was 7 laps in. I think it must have been 8 or 9 laps in. And I made sure to put my hand over my iPad. I didn't want to see this bit. And I was like closing my eyes and going back until I got to the formation lap. And I was like, okay, we're fine. We can do it now.
See, I didn't do that. I just kept going.
No, I
was like,
gotta go back. I had to go back. And then I made sure not to go on like Instagram, which was very difficult, or open anything at all that morning. I was like, I need to wait until I see the entire race.
Yeah, and as much as we do have a lot to talk about in terms of the two races, the Australian and the Chinese Grand Prix, we have to talk about the really, really sad passing of Eddie Jordan, because, as not even just as like an Irish Formula One podcast, we're also just massive fans of Eddie. And I have to tell you now, my heart absolutely shattered getting that news during the week.
And it was quite shocking news as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't really expecting it, because he'd been on, like, he had done podcasts and he was doing appearances and interviews, like, up to a couple of days before, and he was going out for dinner with his friends and everything. So it's very sad. And, like, in fairness, Eddie Jordan was, like, the original out there pundit on television as well. Like, he would just say whatever he wanted. He would do whatever he wanted. One of the best team principals for sheer reactions when his team was doing well, particularly when they were doing well, because the hands in the air, the sheer joy. And like, actually, he should never have been anywhere near a Formula One team. When you think about where he came from and you think about what he did, like, Formula One is such a niche little thing. It is such an expensive little boys club. And here's a guy who was working in Bank of Ireland.
In Bank of Ireland before he started his motorsport career. And while he tried his hand at driving, I think after a while he was like, no, this is too inconsistent. And also like the broken bones over the years, that he basically decided, no, I need to commit to the family, but still like dipped his toe in and actually started up teams. And look at where he brought it. Like, it's amazing.
It's very sad that actually that's never going to happen again. It's too expensive now. You're actually never going to have someone who's going to come in there with a little small budget, because you can't do it with a small budget. Like, even the teams that have a small budget, it's not really a small budget in the grand scheme of life.
Gone are the days when you could spend $10 million in a year, because that's how much Jordan spent in their first year of F1.
The fact that he got an Irish national anthem played when they won a Grand Prix.
Do you remember like the drama around that though? Like, they weren't sure what they were going to play.
Technically, they were registered as a British team,
Yeah.
weren't they? So it probably should have been the British anthem. Of course.
When you think about it, like McLaren is supposed to be a New Zealand team, but actually they play the British national anthem.
You see, and then of course you had all that stuff with Eddie Jordan as well, whose driving license, a British driving license, and you had all that kind of drama that went around with Jordan as well. But the best thing about Jordan for me was the colour yellow of the car. Like, and my dad, who's not a big Formula One fan, right, at all, he watched Formula One for Jordan. He was pretty much pulling on the green jersey, and Eddie Jordan discovered possibly the best driver in the whole history of Formula One in Michael Schumacher. That's something that cannot ever be taken away from that man.
No, and actually I think he always wore that fact with some sort of pride, even though he was still very, very, very miffed about Michael ditching them after one race for Benetton. But he was saying in an interview years ago about how Ron Dennis had turned around to him and basically said, "Oh, welcome to the Piranha Club," or something along those lines, because like that's what went on. People would just like try and steal the drivers out from under you. So as much as like, yes, he was very bitter about it for a time, he did kind of joke about it in later years, and he was like, yeah, I discovered Michael Schumacher when nobody else did. I also love the fact that he needed a driver because his other one was sent to jail for assaulting a bouncer.
That is Bertrand Gallo. I'm not going to pronounce that name correctly. Which jailed after an off-track incident. That is, I mean, if you're going to be Eddie Jordan, that's the type of story that you're going to have.
Yeah, like people were all saying that he was the original rock star of the grid, which is so true, and not just because he was a musician as well. Like that's
he sold Jordan in
2005,
right? And then he went on to become a TV personality. And I used to love Eddie Jordan on TV because he would just grab people and make, like, I'm sure trying to produce Eddie Jordan was an absolute nightmare. He would just go and grab people and make them speak to BBC and make them speak to Jake Humphries. And you're kind of going, Eddie, like, I don't know whether you can really go and do this. Like, he would grab whoever was walking by and go, you need to speak to us. And of course, everybody did. It's Eddie Jordan.
Yeah. And like, I think that's the thing. Like, none of the others would have gotten away with it, but Eddie always did.
He did.
Because Eddie just had that, you know, lovable personality, and he was like, it wasn't even just a show either. He was like that in real life. I actually met him a couple of times because he used to always come into my uncle's petrol station, and my mum ran the shop, and he was just always so lovely. And he loved when I would say to him that I was a big Formula One fan, mostly because at that time, like, you wouldn't have met many young girls who were into motorsport. Just back then, you just didn't. Like, I was not quite bullied, but I was definitely called weird for liking Formula One as a 6-year-old.
That's fair.
And basically, he just was like, oh, it's great to see young people interested in the sport, especially like young girls. Like, as much as it was a boys' club, he recognized very early on that, you know, girls liked sports too. They liked Formula One as well. And, you know, look at us now. We've got the F1 Academy and everything. Yeah. So he was always very, very, very sweet. He used to always slag my mum over because we used to travel a lot, so he used to always be like, oh, where have you been now since I saw you last, and things like that. So yeah, he was just always a gent and very kind. And I'm getting upset
you
now.
I was just going to say as well, and the outpouring of emotion from the entire motorsport world after his passing has been absolutely incredible. Jake Humphrey, obviously, who worked with him for a long time in BBC, he got very, very emotional on his podcast talking about Eddie Jordan. You know, he was openly tearful. And it just seemed like they all had the best of fun when he was on television. And like, in fairness, Eddie Jordan allowed the likes of Christian Horners and Gunter Steiners of the world, you know, to realise, yeah, you know what, you can be a team principal and have a little bit of a personality. I'm so upset that there was no Drive to Survive when Eddie Jordan was around.
I actually said that. I was like, I wonder, like, if Drive to Survive had existed back in those like late 90s, early 90s, like, oh my god, like Eddie would have been probably the Gunter Steiner of it. Or like even like Fred Vasseur kind of comes across as that like cheeky chappy, like plays a few pranks on everybody around the paddock. And I also think that like one thing I again remember, like everybody in the paddock was so happy for Eddie Jordan and the Jordan team when they succeeded. And I do kind of see a little bit of that like it's like, oh, Fred went into Ferrari when they were still struggling, but then when Ferrari actually started doing well, everybody was actually delighted, and it just does kind of echo that. So yeah, it would have been really fun to see Eddie be a part of Drive to Survive, I think.
Oh, 100%. Look, and his legacy lives on in Formula One. The Aston Martin team now, I suppose, if you go back far enough, was that Jordan team, and their lovely tribute with the Shamrock and Jordan's name on that green Aston Martin, fitting that the Aston Martin's green.
And there's still people working for Aston Martin who worked for Jordan. So like,
really?
There's a lot of people that are still around the paddock who, like, a lot of them were interviewed for Sky Sports and for Channel 4, and they were all saying it's like, we owe Eddie our careers, and it's the legacy will just live on. Like, it's going to be a massive void for the sport, but also for Ireland as a whole.
Oh, 100%. He'll be dearly, dearly missed, Mr. Eddie Jordan.
He will. Will we get into the 2 races now?
Oh, it's going to be difficult to get into the 2 races, but let's get into them. Okay, so the 2025 season kicked off in Australia, and we probably couldn't have asked, and Formula One could not have asked for a more exciting race. You think you're going down to Australia, bring your shorts, bring your flip-flops. Oh no, you needed a brolly and a wetsuit pretty much in Australia. It was a crazy race.
And honestly, like, when they kept saying, it's like, oh, there's a threat of rain on the Sunday for the race, and I was like, yeah, threat of rain. It'll be like a little drizzle, and that'll be it. No, an absolute torrential downpour that had everybody going off track. Poor Isaac Hajar. I have never, like, seeing how upset he was, my heart really went out to him. Seeing how it happened, you're like, yeah, do you know what? That could have happened to any of them. It was just so unfortunate that it happened to him. Yeah. But like, hey, he joins a very special club. Even like Jenson Button, who went on to be a world champion, has crashed under safety car conditions or formation laps and things like that. So like, it happens. Anthony
Hamilton is an absolute hero.
Oh, he's paddock dad.
Oh my, like, the fact that they captured that moment as well was, and he was doing that typical dad thing of like being aggressive and loving at the same time. He was grabbing, going, no, you're going to be fine. You know, what do you do? You're going to be absolutely fine. There's going to be no problems here at all. He was doing that, like, shaking him and everything. And Martin Brundle always says, if a driver keeps his helmet on walking into the paddock, he thinks it's his fault. And he didn't take his helmet off at all. It was so sad. Helmut Marko needs to, honestly, I don't curse much on this, right? He needs to fuck off with his opinions. And even Christian Horner is like, oh, he comes from a certain time. But you need to speak to him, and Red Bull as an organisation need to go, you cannot treat someone like that. Like, he made a mistake. We'll get into the Liam Lawson thing in a little while as well, because I think the Hajar thing actually has probably had an impact in how they're talking about Liam Lawson now, because they're not being as cruel as they were to him. And I was like, you need to really settle down here. You need to know your place. This is one of your junior drivers. It was just, how excited would this man have been to start his first Grand Prix? An arm around him is so much better than screaming in his face.
Yeah, and I do think that, like, as much as we were all making jokes about how there were 6 rookies on the grid and how it was going to be absolutely chaotic going down into turn 1, I do feel really, really bad that only 2 of them ended up finishing the race, because a lot of them, like, did drive a very good race, but unfortunately due to the conditions, like, they were literally thrown into the deep end in such a nasty way that, like, when you've got people like Fernando Alonso not even being able to keep the car on track, then you're just kind of screwed.
It was an interesting Sky, and I think it must be F1 in general, are really leaning into the rookie thing, because they're giving us like a little mini rookie table every now and again to go, who is top of the rookies and who's winning. And look, it's Kimi Antonelli is all over. You're driver of the day, Kimi. What? Me? Why?
But do you know why I think that is? So for those of you listening, he didn't get driver of the day for Australia.
No, China,
when he really, really should have gotten it for Australia, but he got it for China. And I do think it's probably because people went, oh yeah, Jesus, Kimi probably should have gotten it for Australia. We'll vote for him for China. He did grand. And I was like, what? No, you just wait to a race where he actually deserves it. But what was on the radio was even funnier.
And then, because I was Martin Brundle and David Croft are doing their little, because now they don't have a final lap point to talk about at the end of the race, so there's really not a whole lot to talk about if the race isn't close. And they were talking about driver of the day, and they literally like, Kimi Antonelli has gotten driver of the day. And they were trying to be like nice to Kimi, but being like, oh, I suppose people can vote for whoever they want. But I mean, surely there's other people on this race trying to deserve it more than him for this.
Well, but yes, to be blunt. But was it Toto or Bono who was on the radio to Kimi to tell him? And they were like, oh, maybe it's like your good looks or your target demographic or something.
Did you hear Bono call him Lewis?
Oh, I did.
And Lewis, oh, Kimi. It was always going to happen. Always going to happen.
Of course it was. And I think the obsession with the rookies as well is purely because I don't think we've had this many rookies in a season.
No, there's a lot. Maybe when Minardi were in it as well, they would have had at least 2 rookie drivers, I suppose, at a time.
Yeah, but that's still only 2.
It is 100%. So actually, we need to talk more about Australia and McLaren. They are 100% the form team so far out of the 2 races. They should have finished a lot higher in the points, both drivers. The rain came at the wrong time for Oscar Piastri. He went off the track. Lando also went off the track. He was able to keep it on the track and went on to win the race. Oscar Piastri finished 9th, I think, in the end, which is disappointing for him.
Disappointing, but a good recovery considering he ended up at the back of the track.
Yeah,
or back of the group.
100%. Yeah.
But, all thanks to Jeremy Clarkson for teaching him how to reverse a tractor on the farm, that he was able to reverse that McLaren back out onto the track and wasn't beached at his home Grand Prix.
Yeah, and I felt sorry for him. And it does show you, though, that being on the right tyres at the right time really does win you Grand Prix and really does give you points, because like you might lose 28, 29 seconds in the pit lane, but you can make that up in like 2 or 3 laps if someone else is on the wrong tyres. It's incredible to me. It's mad. And
especially when you think of with a wet track as well, you've got to factor in how quickly is the track going to be wet when it starts raining. So can you get another lap out of the dry tyres or not? Or when it stops raining and how dry the track is like at what point do you go off the intermediate tires and you go back onto the soft or the medium or whatever. Like those calls are just so important. And even with McLaren for the Chinese Grand Prix, I think they called their tires perfectly. Tire choices are very, very important in races like these, and I think this season they're going to be even more particular about it. And you're smiling and laughing. I'm like, what's going on?
I'm smiling because it is one of those things where when people who don't like Formula One hear people talking about tires and about rubber and about PSI, they're like, what? How can that be a thing? And you don't understand marbling. Do you know marbling? You wouldn't know marbling, that's and you really get into, you're looking at the race going, oh, I can see the inside of that left front there. Now that's not good. It's like when you start watching the Olympics and you're like, oh, that's skateboarding. Now 6.2 would have given that. He messed up that ollie there. That's kind of what you get into, really. We're like, we all pretend we know absolutely everything about it. And you go, yes, I can see what happened there. Yes, absolutely. That lockup, as Martin Brunner says, it's going to be like a 50 pence piece now.
50 pence piece, yeah.
Can we give Lando Norris a bit of credit for breaking Max Verstappen's 63 race streak, being the top of the Drivers' Championship?
100% credit where credit's due. And he drove a stellar race in Australia, drove a very good race in China, considering he did not look very strong. And actually McLaren as a whole didn't look very strong when we actually started the race weekend come Friday. I know they came top of the timings in practice 1, but then the minute that the sprint qualifying started, and even during the sprint race itself, yes, Piastri got a little bit more racy, but Lando just couldn't find the balance at all.
I love a sprint weekend because there's only one practice session and then everything else matters, absolutely. And I love that. That's what I want. I want to be able to watch actual cars racing or qualifying for things that matter. I love practice, but it can be a bit boring and you don't really know what's happening.
It's literally the definition of cars just driving around in circles.
100%. And you're like, oh, this person tops the timings. Yeah, but they could be literally have no fuel or it's a crazy lap. So I love a sprint week, but either the DRS, which was 75 meters longer in China, had no impact for the sprint. And then the tyres, they did them 1 PSI up. We're talking about tyres again. And that seemed to have a massive impact because the medium tyre was absolute shite. 12 laps into a 19 lap race and nobody's going to pit for new tyres. And you saw that in the actual Grand Prix. People were pitting between lap 12 and 14 and you're going, well, that's why, because they fell off an absolute cliff in that sprint.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard to watch. You're going, these very little. I didn't think there was I think Crofty told us that there was 25 non-DRS overtakes last year in China. And I was like, okay, maybe they will be able to. But it didn't actually turn out that way in the sprint at all. all. It was that very much that DRS train down the back straight. You're going, this race could be horrendous. I was worried, but they went for the mediums at the start. Most people, apart from Liam Lawson, I think went for hard. Maybe Bortoletto might have as well at the back.
There's a few of the ones down the latter end of the grid that did go for the hard tire because they wanted to see like how much life they could get out of them, try and get themselves up the grid a little bit higher and pit that little bit later, and then be on fresher, nicer tires for the latter half and do like the one stopper. But yeah, it does seem like the two stopper was the way to go. And even when I play F1 Clash, I tend to do a two stop race for the Chinese Grand Prix as well. I tend to start off on the soft and then zoom away out the front, and then usually by the time I'm doing my pit stop, I have a big enough lead that I can still come out in front, and that's how I do the Chinese Grand Prix.
And if you were actually driving, you'd win. Okay, is that what you told me to say? Shall we just finish talking about McLaren and their amazing Chinese Grand Prix, which you always know a driver is doing well the less you see said driver at the front. You didn't see Piastri at all, and I was quite annoyed at F1's global feed because they showed us him crossing the line. I was like, no, go back to... It looks like Lando's brakes are not working here. Can we go back to him and George potentially having an issue?
I totally forgot that Lando's brakes basically... So what he was saying on the radio, which I didn't fully understand at first, is that how the brakes were getting longer.
Yes.
Or sorry, the brake pedal was getting longer or something like that. And I was like, how is it falling out? Like, is that what he's trying to say? It was 7 o'clock in the morning, folks. My brain hadn't kicked into gear yet. And then suddenly I was like, oh, I get it now. He has to brake earlier and brake harder because it's not engaging as quickly. So
having never stepped on a Formula One brake pedal, I believe, though, it is one of the hardest brake pedals to ever step on. I remember there was someone driving a Formula One car and they were braking like a celebrity. They were braking and they thought that they were doing really well braking, and they were like using like 10% of the brake's capacity. You're like, the brake pedal is absolutely so sensitive, but so hard to push. It's the same like if you jam on in a car, you really get that sense of the brake pedal being all the way in. It must have been, and then like he had no brakes then. Like he's trundling around afterwards, and you're going, is he going to be able to stop on the grid here? What's gonna happen?
But it was also like, was he going to be able to stop for the hairpin? And that's what they kept saying. It's like what he's asking all these technical questions, but what he's really asking is,
can I stop?
Am I going to be able to like brake enough to make this hairpin turn, or am I going to go shooting off?
I think
the
they
crowd?
were gaslighting him a little bit as well, because they were like, we see a little problem. It's been like that the whole race. Don't be worrying too much about it. And then it got like progressively worse and worse and worse. And Lando's like obviously feeling it in the car. And then they just had to be like, Lando, just you need to stop braking, brake less. And then
just drive slower. They're like, oh, you're grand. Like Russell's way behind. But of course, Mercedes can hear all of this, and they're going, push, Russell, push.
I think he was like 13 or something seconds behind. But like by the end of it though, he was like right there. And I was going, this is dodgy for Lando. But McLaren 1-2, they are kicking ass. The last McLaren driver to lead the championship was Lewis Hamilton in 2012. So McLaren are doing so well. I know it's 2 races in and the predictions are a bit silly, but I actually think McLaren are going to run away with this Constructors' Championship. I'm not going to call the drivers one yet because I think that's too early. I think literally because of the disqualifications in China, we'll talk about that in a second, for Ferrari, who love messing up a perfect weekend. I think they have this in the bag because Red Bull are only scoring points with one driver, and Ferrari have wasted so many points in that second race. So that's what I think.
Well,
anyway.
and anything can happen because when you look at where McLaren were at the start of last season compared to where they finished up, anything can happen throughout the year. But at the moment, McLaren definitely look like they have not only the strongest driving pair, but they also have the strongest car, which I would also say, I think Mercedes next, because I think they are second in the constructors at the moment as well. And they were they tied at the top or tied for second after Australia as well? So I think Mercedes, let's not discount them, because I think if they just keep being consistent for a while, they may sneak a couple of wins here and there as well.
That's funny. I completely had discounted Mercedes, and you're probably right. It could very well end up being McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull.
Good.
Wow. Then Max Verstappen moves to Mercedes because he gets sick of Red Bull.
Honestly, at this point, anything could happen. And look, we've touched on it there now with Red Bull. Because as much as McLaren are going woo, the 2 races have not been ideal for Red Bull. And as much as everyone keeps asking Max, like, how pissed off are you? And he's just there going, I'm actually pretty relaxed about it all. Like, we're doing our best. Like, why does everybody keep wanting to make drama out of all of this? And it's like, yeah, Max, you are outperforming that car. That car should not be in a position that you are putting it in. With the way that the car is, like, he's even being surprised that he's like second in the drivers' championship at the moment. So when you look at how he's doing and how his teammate is doing, there's clearly a massive difference in experience levels, because again, using the Alonso comparison, like that Ferrari when Alonso was driving it, like, should not have been anywhere near the top couple of positions, but he was constantly on the podium. So it kind of echoes with that thing of, even if you don't have like the best car under you, if you can make it do what you want it to do, then you can still at least clamber away. And I think as long as Max kind of stays within touching distance of the McLarens, if they do manage to get a fix for that Red Bull in a couple of races time, then I'd say Max could be right up there again.
So you said that Max Verstappen is outperforming that Red Bull, and he is. But is everything still tailored towards Max Verstappen's driving style, what Max Verstappen wants, and therefore it is detriment to any teammate that he has, be that Sergio Perez or Liam Lawson? Is it actually unfair on Liam Lawson to put all the blame on him if the car is really set up for Max Verstappen, who, world-class driver, and he drives a very certain way as well. He likes the car to be on the edge. But I just wonder, like, do they need to stop going completely everything for Max?
So before I answer that, I need to ask you, did you watch that video I sent you of Alex Albon perfectly explaining what actually happens in Red Bull? Because everyone goes down the hard line of the car is just designed for Max. No, the car is designed for both of them. And then Max asks for little tweaks and they just put it onto both cars.
But
So it's not, so yes, it is catering to
Max,
him.
yes.
But at first, you know, the car is just made.
Yeah, but those
And that's
tweaks,
literally
though,
is literally what Alex says in
Okay.
that video. That is like, yes, over time, you know, the more, because he has, what was it that he said? It was more sharpness to his driving or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
So he'll get like the little tweaks here and there. And if that's not your driving style, then yes, you go a little bit, In my opinion, I do think that also, if it is as gradual as Alex Albon said it is, would you not also be able to get used to it?
Oh, hello. Marco over there.
Sorry, but that is the thing. Like, if something is like being tweaked here and there, and then you're driving it for a while,
Yeah,
like
that's fair.
you adapt, or ask them to. Okay, well, like if you're putting 3 tweaks onto the front wing on his car, don't do it on mine. I don't understand why that's not a thing.
Yeah, that's fair. But then why? Like, what is it then about that second seat in Red Bull? Perez was the only one in the last 5 or 6 years that did well in that seat, right? And he didn't do particularly well that they kept him, but he did okay. Alex Albon shit the bed in it. Liam Lawson is doing the same thing. What is it about the pressure for driving alongside Max Verstappen that turns very good drivers into not so good drivers when they're in a Red Bull? Because Albon is like knocking it out of the park for Williams now.
So I heard this absolutely brilliant rumor theory thing, and
Give
I was
it to
like,
me.
actually, this makes a lot of sense. The last driver to have outperformed Max Verstappen when he was his teammate was Daniel Ricciardo, and Daniel Ricciardo has now done the Voldemort on the Defense Against the Dark Arts post, and that's why every driver after Daniel Ricciardo has shat the bed.
Oh my God, our two great loves, Formula One and Harry Potter, coming together.
But like, I heard it and I went, "Oh, that's so silly," and then you kind of think about it and you go, "Oh, but they have a point."
Do you
What
think-
kind of voodoo did Daniel Ricciardo do to that seat when he left Red Bull?
Not to talk about Daniel Ricciardo too much, and I know you won't mind anyway, you're such a Daniel Ricciardo fan. Do you think he'd still be with Red Bull if he hadn't left?
Oh, do you know what? I think maybe.
Yeah, I
But
think so
my
too, to be
question then would be, would he be world champion by now? Or would he have swapped to a different leading team? Because there have been positions open in those years since, because he was kind of like down the pack, then he wasn't really in the running for.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
would Max have gone?
So this, I was just going to say this because, I think this is actually going to be a problem at McLaren. I think Piastri and Norris are going to take world championships off each other, and McLaren won't care who really wins. They want either one, but it becomes much more difficult if they are finishing 1 and 2. You're going to go, okay, who do we actually favour here? Because Norris, even though he's leading the championship, Piastri be knocking down the door going, yeah, but like I'm like one place above him in that completely turning around. So you cannot just go with Norris this early on. I think you're probably right though. If Ricciardo had been the one winning championships, then yeah, maybe Max could have went. And I wonder if Toto Wolff would have had Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton in that Mercedes.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second, actually. But just to answer your question about Liam Lawson, for me personally, I do think that there's clearly something fundamentally not working right on that Red Bull.
It's the driver.
And I think, no... I think in general, because Max is also complaining. He's also saying that the car is not, like, it's not working for him as well as he would like it to either.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's just something fundamentally wrong with the car itself. But I think that Max just has so much more experience that's why he's been able to still get results out of it. Whereas Liam has come in and he's just like, whoa, this thing is just not doing what I wanted to do and I don't know how to fix it. And that's why he's not been able to turn it around as much. Does he deserve to be getting the boot this early? Because that's apparently what's going around.
Wasn't it Ralph Schumacher has said that he's been talking to like an F1 insider, I think is the way he phrased it. So whether that's Marco, I don't know. Look, it's someone inside Red Bull.
Well, also, do you know what else Ralph Schumacher was saying?
Go on.
Oh, I don't think Yuki Tsunoda should take the Red Bull seat because clearly it's absolutely chaos up there and he's doing just fine on the RBs, even though the RBs don't have a point yet. Do they not have a point yet? Are they still pointless?
No, I think they have a point now
point
because of the
double disqualifications.
Does Christian Horner get in his very, very expensive helicopter and go and visit?
So he likes to show off during Drive to Survive.
Yes, and go and visit Mr. Ricciardo.
Well, that's a question that a lot of people have been wondering, because at the end of the day, they didn't choose Yuki for a reason. Just because Liam is now not performing as well as they'd hoped, has that like negated those reasons that they didn't give Yuki the drive in the first place? And Isaac, as much as he's very speedy and he's been proved to be like quite racy in the actual races themselves once he actually gets past the formation lap. Sorry, it had to be said. We've only really seen him drive 2 races technically with the sprint and the Chinese Grand Prix. But is he going to get the tap? I don't think so. I actually don't think that they really have anybody lined up to do it.
I think it's far too early to ditch Liam Lawson.
100%.
2 races is unlucky. Now, look, I think the problem is that it's not actually even in the race that he's underperforming. He's underperforming in qualifying. He's not getting out of Q1, and that's a problem for Red Bull. Whatever about not scoring points, not getting out of Q1, and then like in the race, in fairness, in China to Liam Lawson, he did okay in overtakes a little bit, but he kind of got stuck around the kind of 14-15 mark, didn't really get past anybody after that. And you're going, Liam, you need to show a little bit more here. And very quickly we've gotten rid of the cockiness as well from Liam Lawson.
Yes.
Which is sad actually, because I kind of enjoyed that.
That's kind of, I think, what he needed. And I literally, it just dawned on me there. I was like, now that he doesn't have the fire lit under him to basically knock Perez out of Formula 1, he's just kind of actually lost that zoom.
So will he have an Albon moment here? Will he get relegated down to Racing Bulls, or will he not have a drive at all? If he gets relegated down to Racing Bulls, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, does he then get that bit of confidence that Albon got when he went down to, were they called Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri? What were they called at that point?
We also have to remember Kvyat and Gasly both did the same thing. They were both put back down to gain their confidence back in the Toro Rosso team.
It's the poison chalice. It's the Minister of Health of Formula 1. That's what it is. No one ever really wants to be that second driver.
Yeah, but Liam showed that he really, really wanted it, and now he's not able to come up with the goods, which I feel really, really bad for him. And it makes me laugh every single time Carl Mullen calls him Draco Malfoy, because then I can't see anything but Tom Felton.
He is on the Liam Lawson is the best driver in the world bandwagon. He's kind of protecting him. He's like, he needs to give him time and stuff. And
which fair. I think they do need to give them time.
100%. But anytime he calls him Draco Malfoy, you're right. I want to see him fail because because Draco Malfoy turns out to be, and this is not a spoiler, one of the worst characters in Harry Potter, because he's a little shithouse and can't do what he was told that he needed to do, right? And he makes poor Snape do all his bidding, and it's very sad. It's not a spoiler. Harry Potter is out a very long time, right? Don't give me shit for
I love how
that.
we just keep finding ways to bring it back to Harry Potter. Oh my God, what is wrong with us? Oh yes, I also checked to see which team is it that's on 0 points. It's Alpine.
Ah, poor
Bless
little Alpine.
them.
Has to do okay, actually, interesting.
They are double point scoring in the last race. Couldn't believe it, considering they did kind of not very well in Australia. So fair play to them.
Let's give some props to Ferrari in the sprint race of China.
I've been waiting for you to get onto Ferrari.
Caveat that. Lewis Hamilton, superb qualifying in the sprint and superb sprint race. Lewis Hamilton is doing amazing things in that Ferrari. Didn't have such a good Chinese Grand Prix, but still had quite a good Grand Prix. Then 35 minutes after the end of the Grand Prix, we get this note saying that they were summoned to the stewards, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton and Pierre Gasly. And we're going, and it was the dreaded technical regulations, which means they have found something that you're not going to be able to argue against.
No.
And they went, did their little steward piece, and Lewis Hamilton had the tiniest amount of overwear on his skid block, and he was disqualified. Charles Leclerc was also disqualified for being underweight, because when they removed the 2 litres of fuel, he went underneath the 800 kilograms limit, like 799. This was all it's all
minuscule, but
it needs
a
to be
little
somewhere.
goes a long way.
Yeah, but it needs to be somewhere. Just get rid of the end plates on the Ferrari altogether, because they don't seem to do anything.
Yeah, clearly, Charles Leclerc was able to drive better without one. So.
I actually think because it made the front wing go slightly lower without touching the floor. And so someone in my office the other day said, why is this skid block thing a problem? And I was explaining to him, I was like, well, a Formula 1 team wants to run the car as low as possible. That's how you're going to get the fastest car. So you need to have a rule there somewhere to stop them where it goes that low. And look, Mercedes tried last year, and the porpoising was absolutely all over the place, right? So you need to have rules, technical rules. I'm sorry, Ferrari, you shit the bed once again. They are the most incredible Formula 1 team to not like, because they always give you something that you can go to bed happy with at the end of a weekend. And you're going, oh, this is a really good weekend for Ferrari. And then when I saw the little breaking Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, double disqualification, the howls of laughter out of me. I was like, oh my God, Ferrari.
I know, and then they even had to release a statement to be like, we weren't trying to gain an advantage. And it was like, okay, I didn't see anybody accusing you of that, but okay.
The Instagram statement. It was literally like they had done something really, really wrong. It was like the air of like a Lance Armstrong statement, just the way it was written, the way it was phrased. And I was like, lads, no one thinks you were cheating. This is not the putting weights in the bottom of a American bobsled and Cool Runnings here. Do you know what I mean? It's not a John Candy thing we're going here. But yeah, that was one of the funniest things for me, that technical rules, you can't be going to break them. Remember that time Lewis Hamilton put his hand on Max Verstappen's wing and go
yes.
He was just going up, let me just see what's happening here. I watched that live and I was going,
don't think you should be doing that.
There was also not another tangent. I did see a mechanic video from, I don't know what race it was, I think it was last year, where the car came in to the pits to serve a penalty and he touched the front wing and then goes,
yes. That was only last year, was it?
I absolutely howled at that, because you just know, and he puts his head in his hands, he's like, oh no.
And then they had to literally let him go, and then he had to serve it again.
So funny. So
Too funny. But yes, no, poor Ferrari. They were all happy and cheers with Lewis getting his sprint victory, his first victory with Ferrari. And
will they bounce back?
Yeah, probably. But whether or not, let's face it, during the race, their 2 drivers crashed into each other, and then there was all this radio.
Someone has hit me. Yes, it
was your
Charles.
teammate. I was looking back at that, and I was a bit like, I don't think Lewis knew that Charles was there.
No.
So I actually was like, Lewis wasn't using his mirrors.
Yeah.
Which, again, I know I haven't been like bashing him too much lately, but I was like, there he is. There's the Lewis I knew before. But yeah, I think especially then we heard all those radio messages coming across to be like, is Lewis supposed to be letting him by? Was it Lewis's idea? Was it Charles' idea? Was it Ferrari's idea? Like what actually was going down with that? And then Fred being like really, really annoyed that they were like releasing that and playing it for everybody to listen to. I was but you know that happens, Fred. So like, come on.
I think Fred was annoyed that they didn't play all the messages. So he was like, oh, they're creating a narrative on the TV. He was saying there is no problem with Lewis Hamilton and his engineer. There definitely sounds like there is a problem between the two of them.
100%. Like, as much as he was saying Max gives his race engineer abuse all the time and you guys don't say anything about that, it's like, yes they do.
We do all that. He's so mean to him. He's so mean to him. But then I like in Australia when he was like, what was it, use K1, was it K1 button, the overtake button? And Lewis was like, literally shut the fuck up about the button. And then the very next radio message was, K1 available? He's going to kill you when he gets back there. So yeah, that's a nice little storyline thread we have throughout the year of listening to Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari team radio. Actually, I must do that sometime. I never use that race extra button thing that Sky are always going on about listening to the team. I never use that.
Well, we have it now.
I know, and actually because it's a massive F1 TV thing. Like there's people in the States that literally set up multiple screens to have all the kind of that race control thing that like Bernie Collins was doing, in the Sky commentary box. And like I don't know whether I'd be confused listening to all the different team radios, but yeah, I'll try for one race. I think. Speaking of the next race, a couple of weeks time in Japan, and I'm sure it's going to rain because it always rains.
Because why have they put Japan at this time of year when it's flipping monsoon season?
I enjoyed the first two races immensely. I enjoyed Australia more than anything. It was just great.
It was a great opener.
I love a bit of rain, like everybody loves a bit of rain. The fact that McLaren did so well, Liam Lawson is not doing great. Ferrari looked like they were going to be not great this season. Then they bounced back in China. Unfortunately, didn't get any points because they double disqualification. But then you've got all the kind of the minnow teams doing quite well as well. Like what's going to happen with Aston Martin? What's going to happen with Fernando Alonso? He looks like he may throw the toys out of the pram at any given moment, and I am all here for that.
Oh, 100%. I love a ranty Alonso.
Yes.
And like I think it's a testament to the teams now. Again, very unfortunate for poor Alpine, who have actually looked very racy, but just haven't been able to. Well, of course, Gasly was disqualified, so that's why they're still on 0 points.
Yes.
But like Sauber have points, Haas have points. Like, what is happening? This is amazing. I like that for them. And also, Williams have scored more points in the first two races than they did in the entirety of 2024.
Yeah, and
amazing.
Alex Albon is outperforming Carlos Sainz, which I didn't really have on my bingo card for 2025.
I thought that he was going to start off better than him, but I do think that Carlos is going to crawl it back, because at the end of the day, it is difficult to move into a new team and try and get the car working for you. I think it was very unfortunate that he didn't finish Australia, and I think it was unfortunate that he was out so early in qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix, but he'll make it work. Again, another driver who I think is capable of outperforming the car. He even says it himself. He's like, I'm speedier than this. So like, come on, team no appendix.
No appendix. Can he get his appendix removed again? Would that help?
No, I don't think so.
Just the one
they
appendix.
Don't grow back.
No, I mine done. I got mine when I was like 8. So
wow.
Yeah, it just dissolved in the doctor's hands. I was very nearly dead.
Oh Jesus!
So
that actually same sentence was uttered about my mother's
well,
appendix
there you go.
as well.
There you go. Yeah. See, it's very dangerous, and they don't do anything, which is the worst thing. Not really necessary. They do something for like cows. We eat grass, apparently.
Yeah, it's from our evolutionary history.
Stop the lights, environmental edition. Okay, we will be back after the Japanese Grand Prix, because I'm sure there is going to be much more to talk about, especially if Mr. Liam Lawson is no longer in that Red Bull car.
And let's just face it, we're going to publish this episode and there will probably be an announcement
100%,
an hour afterwards, because that seems to be what happens every single time. So keep an eye out. There'll be some news dropping shortly after we drop this episode.
Okay, hang on, let's see. It's crazy that Yuki Tsunoda is going to be in that Red Bull for Japan, isn't it?